I'm Dr. Jeff Kaplan, and for over 30 years I've traveled the globe from Dubai to Moscow and Johannesburg, from Singapore to Shanghai and Istanbul. I've studied the world's best businesses and the people that run them. But something is very different now. From the boardroom to the break room, there's a growing realization that our relationship with work is broken. But it's not too late. You still have a choice. Hold on to the past and struggle to survive, or join the willing, change, and thrive in the world of tomorrow that's already arrived. So if you're willing to think different, willing to work different, willing to change at the speed of now, then you're willing to win. Well, it's that time again. This is Willing to Win, and I'm Jeff Kaplan.
I'm Tara Thomas Getman. Each week, we ask you to be a part of the conversation, to listen in, and then also give us your input, your feedback, because we want you to join the Legion. This is a movement where we know, we're acknowledging, and we're admitting that for many of us, our relationship with work is broken, and we are here to help give you tangible steps to improve it. And this week,
but you have to do work too. And this week,
right. Yeah, it's a two-way street here, right? We're not going to be passive about this. So it's fun, but also interesting. You're asking a really critical question
this week, of our
that
listeners.
We need to, consider seriously about our employer. And it sounds almost amusing because you think of that zombie-like effect that many people can have on the job. But the question is your organization still alive?
Yes, I want the listeners, I want the people in the Legion to do a health check of their organization this week. Find out if it's still alive. Are you working for a zombie organization?
In the past, this reminds me of a clip from a popular 80s movie, Weekend at Bernie's. And you love the movie, the comedy side of it, but over the years on the job, I have experienced what I would call the Weekend at Bernie effect, where my side, I'd like to think, or the office area where I worked, was kind of the more lively, fun bunch. Then I might walk across the hall into another department and felt that the staff was literally propped up, much like Bernie was in that popular movie.
Yeah.
The organization.
By the way, if you don't know if you're the lively one or the Bernie, you're the Bernie. You're the Bernie.
That's right. If you have to think about that for a minute, perhaps you're on the zombie side of the fence. So tell us about the concept, but first let's watch a clip so we can catch all of you up if you've never seen Weekend at Bernie's.
Hi, Bernie! Hey, Bernie, just like last week, huh?
Oh, Bernie, you animal, you are insatiable.
Doesn't anyone realize he's dead?
Hold the boat!
Got him?
Hold the boat!
Vito, I'm telling you, Lomax is alive. Maybe Paulie is rustier than we thought.
Ooh, Bernie, you're starting to peel. Want to get you out of sun, huh?
So it's funny, Jeff, but it's a real thing. I mean, people sometimes are like dead on the job.
Well, we've talked about that before. We talked about the bus story where, a large part of my life, I felt like I was on a bus ride. My life was a bus ride. The problem was I wasn't driving the bus, right? I would just stop at certain places and they'd be, me fulfilling expectations of others. You get your mom says to go to high school, you go to high school, you get your high school degree. People think you should then go to college. In those days, it's not so much a requirement anymore. You go to college and, you bus stops again, you have your degree, right? But it's like I was Bernie. I wasn't driving the bus of my own life. And people understood that. And a lot of people have commented on that from the community coming in and giving us our feedback. But the thing is, it's not just about individuals, right? It's not just individuals. Organizations can be dead and they don't even know it.
Yeah, and not only that, once you have that engagement with somebody at work and realize, hey, whatever they've got going on, whatever they're involved with in terms of projects, sometimes you realize that your organization is leaving you out, and that's when we fall into those sort of hamster wheel patterns of behavior where we're just checked out.
Absolutely.
We're no longer engaged. So what are some of the ways, what are the strategies that we can sort of evaluate our organization, do that health check as you describe, to really determine, is my organization alive or dead?
Alive or dead? First of all, I think there should be, people should start to think about and separate in their mind two concepts.
Okay.
The concepts of living and living. right? There's two different meanings to that. There's one where I'm not dead, and the other meaning is I am fulfilled and excited and full of energy every morning when I get up. And you know me, that's exactly how I
Yes.
feel about my life. But that's not how it is. Sorry, that's not how it is for a lot of folks, right? So really, we have to separate those two out. And if we think about an organization as an organism, right? Because that's sort of like one of the basic building blocks of life are like cells and smaller organisms, right? We know that they pass and are dead when they're in stasis, right? Because in nature, to move is life. But to move doesn't necessarily mean you're living. Right? So remember, we're trying to parse those out. So there's one where we're surviving and there's another where we're thriving. And we want to start developing a future where we're thriving, that part of life, right? But interestingly enough, if you start thinking about a cell, it has some components. We're not doing biology, and believe me, I got to tell you, when I first started going to school, I had to do a lab to get a degree because I put off science till the very end. Matter of fact, I graduated, right, but provisionally, because I had to go back in the summer to do a 1-unit lab class. That's how much I'm not a science person. So don't worry, audience, we're not going to get too sciencey because that'll never happen with me. But in that 1-unit lab class, I learned about the cell, right? And I don't remember everything, but I remember a couple of things. Number one, you got an outer membrane of the cell, which is the cell wall. And in the middle, you have the nucleus, right? And the nucleus is the brain of the cell, right? And so when we say the difference between living and living, right? You would think that if their brain dies, that they die, right? But at the organism level, that's not the case. If the brain dies, it could take up to a week for the rest of the organism to die. So it's still living, but it's not living, right? Because really, the thing that keeps the organism alive is that cell wall, the permeable membrane, and it is permeable. The cell wall is not a solid thing that keeps the environment out. The cell wall is porous, right? And the purpose of the cell wall and all the enzymes around the outside of that cell wall is to sense the environment around it and say, oh, something's coming in. Is that food? Let it in. Right? Is that poison? Don't let it in, right? So the key to the life of a cell is environmental sensing mechanisms, to be able to sense what's going on in the world and make changes, right? And so when we think about our organizations, it may be that nucleus in our organization is Bernie. I mean, it's a past organization. If you're a Monty Python fan and remember the parrot scene, it's a past parrot. It's no longer, around, right? But the organization still sort of exists because it's still functioning, at that outer edge. And so we really have to ask ourselves, do we have the energy and the focus and the clarity and the vision of tomorrow that we need to know that we're working at a thriving organization? Or is our organization, in fact, just a zombie walking through, the halls of commerce, just doing its thing, but it's not alive, it doesn't have a brain, it's on autopilot? And you really need to ask yourself that, because I think that's where a lot of frustration comes when people work at organizations and they feel unfulfilled, is that they're working for a zombie organization, right? It's just sort of on autopilot. Nobody cares. It's all a checklist, right? Well, that's what gives big business or small business or any business a bad name, right? Because I think business is awesome. It's the task of all of us getting together. You and I talk about it a lot doing this show, right? I'll make the costumes, you build the stage, right? Get a group of people who really care about something and create something that doesn't exist today. That's a thriving organization.
Absolutely.
If yours doesn't feel that way, you have to ask yourself, is my organization dead and doesn't know it?
And when you talk about that environmental sensing mechanism, it's such a cool concept that, like you said, is reminiscent of like the spidey sense that we see in superhero movies. We have to revisit Dr. Kim. We interviewed her in a previous episode. She has a new TikTok clip that speaks exactly to this. In her words, the canary in the coal mine. Let's take a listen.
Spoke to a group today and got a great question about burnout. So the question was, how do you respond to managers who say that burnout is a personal problem? And my response was, burnout is not a personal problem. It is not a you problem. It is an our problem. Because burnout reflects an organizational culture problem that everyone needs to take ownership for. That employee coming to you about burnout is your canary in your coal mine. And if you don't listen, your turnover rate is going to increase. That's not the only employee in burnout. that's the one brave enough to come to you and say, help me fix this. To which your reply should be, how can we do this together?
It's a first. We're letting a repeat person come back, right?
Well, I think it's a testament to the Legion. And, we say that there's a zeitgeist, meaning there's a conversation going on in the world, and all we're doing is trying to capture it and bring it and focus it in one place. And there are really smart people with really valuable things to say. So that's hats off to Kim. Thank you so much for that contribution. And it is a first that we had somebody back. So well done.
If you want to hear more with our previous interview with Kim, you can go to our website, willingtowin.org. That's willing2win.org. But it's not just your organization, because when you talk about this organism or this cell, it extends to our community, our engagements outside of work. So talk a little bit about how that really takes shape when we think of this concept of, are we living or living?
Well, it's interesting when you think about like us as a physical being, right? We're not made of one cell. Right? We're made of billions and billions of cells working together, toward a common good, right? So there's these cells everywhere. There's these organisms everywhere, not just humans. There's other, life on this planet also made up of cells that are organisms, right? Same thing is true with organizations. So when we say that our relationship with work is broken, we're not just talking about the work you get paid for, right? There are other places that you put in work. You put in work in raising your children. You put in work in being a good community member. You're a good community member of your church, right? They depend on you. You're part of that community, right? And so that's what's really important for us to remember, that our relationship with work is really our relationship with organizations, and how we get things done is broken, but we can create a better tomorrow by thinking differently, working differently, and engaging with more people than ever before. And we can do that in our communities as well.
We had an opportunity to be part of a community event. It was called Spark, and the concept is, let's spark one another's interest, enthusiasm, and engagement around ideas for projecting 5 to 10 years. What do you want your community to be like? How do you want it to look? What are the opportunities you want for all of us to be afforded? And it was a chance for you to really take the stage, as you've done so many times in the past, and share some of your unique ideas for building community. It was an enjoyable experience. I had a role of more of sort of a moderator doing this. And I think the part that just really struck me was what you always talk about. All it takes is that one person or that one good idea. And there were people from sort of all walks of life in the community who were given the platform to share their big, hairy idea on a stage that maybe normally they would have never been invited to be part of.
Well, yeah, and the beautiful thing there were so many different perspectives, right? When I see a business problem, I see it from somebody who's, had a terminal degree and a doctorate and looks at P&Ls and organizational design, and that's how I view it. Other people may say, I just want it to be lighter here because it's kind of dark where I work, right? That's their view of it. And another person may say, I just want the products to last a little longer. And that's exactly what we saw at the Spark event, right? So I came at it from a really traditional economic development. How do we grow our community and make it attractive to folks? We had people that came and said, they viewed it from, the arts. How do we create a driving arts community here? For them, that's what would make a better community. Other people said, bring back roller skating. It was a really amazing, kind of demonstration they did. But the point is, there's a lot of different perspectives, and we have to be open to all of those. But today's story is really not so much about what I said, because when I look back on it, I think I was fairly traditional in my approach in what I was suggesting for economic development. And the beauty of Willing to Win is that none of us, including me and you and every one of our listeners, none of us has all the answers. But if we start to structure this conversation, and then we open ourselves to the possibility that someone else might have a better answer or a different approach that later will lead to the right answer, that's what's beautiful. And really, that's what I want to talk about today. I've got a story, Tara, and this is going to blow you away, right? When we did the Spark event, the idea of community development is typically this. We want to grow our community economic base. So we figure out, how do we make this small town attractive to big business, right? And the answers are really twofold. Either we have an incredible workforce here that's highly skilled in something, right? That's attractive to that that business, so they want to move here.
Right.
Or number two, we have a beautiful plot of land overlooking, this great river, or something that's just gorgeous, and we're not only going to give that to you at a discounted or free rate, but we're also going to give you tax incentives. Here's $10 million, here's $100 million in tax incentives. Bring those 2,000 jobs to our community, right? And up to this point, that's sort of been the best that we could do. But I got to share this with you. The USA Today, it stopped me in my tracks. You remember I actually called you late at night to say, oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe this. Here, I'm just going to read an excerpt from this thing. It'll explain it. Completely different perspective on how to build a community. Remember, it's either have a trained workforce or give property and tax incentives, right? That's the formula to this day. And that's even what I was espousing. I was corrected. And Paul Davidson of the USA Today wrote this: small cities are now wooing newcomers with cash. Chanel Shearlin was living in limbo last year after she gave up her apartment in Los Angeles and moved to her parents' house in Vail, Colorado, where she worked remotely at the height of the pandemic. That's awesome. She moves back home, makes a little extra money by not having those living expenses. So when the 30-year-old social media strategist heard that a nonprofit in Northwest Arkansas was offering $10,000 and a mountain bike to qualified out-of-towners to relocate to the area to work remotely, she quickly applied. So she goes there.
How cool.
She takes the 10 grand, she puts it down on the house because, right now, credit is fairly lax. She puts it down on the house, gets a $405,000 house, way more house than she'd ever need as a single person. And she rents out the main floor while she lives on the top floor. So the people on the main floor will pay down her house. And then when she gets a family, she'll already have the house of her dreams in this new place.
It's genius.
She's genius. And this whole thing is really interesting because the story goes on. Cities and regions across the nation are offering as much as $20,000 to entice America's newly remote workers to move to their regions. Some areas, like the Ozark, are trying to create a pool of highly skilled workers to help them fill job openings. Others aim to build a skilled workforce to attract new companies. So it's the same outcome, right? It's the same outcome, only we're going a completely different way. Instead of offering $10 million out of our cost, right? Remember we said scarcity versus abundance before? If we're working on the cost side, we're working from a scarcity principle. So they can invest in just one, company or one idea, right? But instead, they took that same investment, they shifted it and brought someone in, right? So each person that comes in then becomes a taxpayer. It'll only take them 1 year on average to recoup that investment. And now they're building up a community of skilled workers. They become attractive, and instead they can have 1, 5, 10 companies. Who knows? I'm not even sure necessarily that this is the solution, but it sure is different than traditional thinking.
It is.
It's very exciting. So a willing to win shout out to the people in the Ozarks and to this young lady for being members of the Legion, even if you don't know you are.
Absolutely. It's what we've been talking about. We're in that unique position where we're poised to renegotiate the terms of what work looks like for us. And this is one of so many creative, outside of the box ideas that are going to take shape, that we're going to sort of shift to becoming the norm, not the exception. We're going to be right back with the Uplift. Don't go anywhere. Lyft Innovate is one of the fastest growing companies in America. The technology consulting firm has a reputation for being a leader in customer success and research. For the second year in a row, Lyft has landed on the prestigious Inc. 5000 list of America's fastest growing private companies in its latest ranking. Lyft's mission is to bridge the gap between the world's best technologies and the people that use them, striving to change the way our partners view work, one innovative idea, service, and solution at a time. To learn more, go to our website, lyftinnovate.com, or call this toll-free number, 1-844-543-8877. Again, that's Lyft Innovate at 1-844-543-8877. So, let's face it, for a lot of us, our organizations may not be dead, but they're on life support, right? How can we resurrect where we work and the engagements moving forward to make it meaningful?
Well, I think the first thing is to realize, and we cannot emphasize this enough, that the Willing to Win movement and the Legion is not about a workers' revolt. It's not about individuals. It's not about individuals going and fighting the man or the corporation to get something, and that the company has to give something up. No, what it's about is optimizing the relationship between individual contributors at any level, whether that's just starting out or, the CEO, the organizational needs, and the customers that are the lifeblood of the organization. It's about trying to find that optimal middle ground where everybody is better together. And I will tell you, it's going to take some work, and it's going to take some self-reflection as well. When we did an analysis of collaboration, right? We, certainly with all the remote work that was going on, and that being a main topic these last couple of years, we've done a lot of work with corporations to try to help them create environments where collaboration is the norm. And we found something very interesting out. There are two groups of people, and one group of people thought that collaboration was when people got together in a room, they talked about something, came up with great ideas, and then they left and did the actual work, heads down work, by themselves. That's what collaboration was. There's a second group of people that got together, talked about what they could do and what plans they had, and then they actually created the plan together, and when they left the room, it was done. Now, can you imagine, what would you think is the characteristic that from one group to another? Was it how tall they were? Was it what? What do you think was the main characteristic?
Generational differences, right? We've lived those. We work with all generations.
Yeah, there was a time when we were just starting to use mobile technology, and mobile, like laptops were a new thing where, if you were over 40, you weren't doing that,
You're
right?
not a digital native.
Yeah, we were digital natives before the kids were digital natives. But, we were under 40 then, so we're like, oh, we have all this technology, we were on top of it, right? Then we have a new digital divide, and that's a collaboration divide.
Absolutely.
So one of the things we've got to do with our group, with the Legion, is to get people thinking about collaboration in a new way, even beyond simply getting together and creating something together in the room, as opposed to going off alone. And that is, how do we create something that is a big social movement across thousands of miles and 1,000 different circumstances and 1,000 different wants and 1,000 different needs. And that's really what this is all about. And that's why we want to emphasize the fact that the Legion it's everybody. We're not anti-org or anti-CEO. We are 100% pro-success. Success for the individual, success for the organization, success for the customer. So once again, we've talked about strategy. If you don't know the strategy of your organization, take time to find out. If there isn't a strategy, ask somebody. That's a great excuse to go talk to the chief executive and ask them, what is the strategy? And ask them the question, how can you help? Each day in your job, what can you do differently to help make them successful? You want a seat at the table and you want to be invited back? Ask your CEO that question. I don't know one that would ever penalize somebody for asking that question. Instead, they would remember you and remember your contribution. And then you can get involved with the conversation and share what you've learned and your perspectives. We just gave you an example a little while ago of how we thought we had an answer, but we were still ourselves working with an old paradigm, right? We're going to give tax incentives and free property, right? And here it is, somebody, the Ozarks comes up with an idea that's totally out of the box, that completely flips the math and makes a lot more human sense. Right? And provides benefits from day one. Giving a company a tax benefit of $10 million, I don't know how, that doesn't make me happy, it doesn't make me smile. Knowing that this young lady moved across country, got 10 grand and a mountain bike and started a new career and is helping build a community, that's exciting, right? That's uplifting. So we want to make sure that if we have new ideas, share your ideas. Whether you want to be a part of the Legion or for some reason you're not willing to share it with us, share them to anybody that'll listen. And if you share them loud enough, we'll find you anyway, right? Because that's what the purpose of the Legion is. And then, ask others. Don't be afraid to talk to other people about this. This isn't a conversation that we're hoping that you come and have with us. We're hoping that you have this conversation at your dinner table. We're hoping you have this conversation, with friends at that work. And certainly we'd like you to communicate with us. But this is about fostering that conversation and really sort of sharpening your own blue car. And if you remember from prior episodes,
yes,
your blue car is defining what it is that you want and how you can help others. And so, you know, we want to get great ideas and new ways of thinking and working and engaging to help others be successful. And that's the purpose of the Willing to Win Legion and what we're all about. And I think today's show was one great example of that, but I know there are more stories out there, and I know that you have those stories. And if you think I'm talking to you out there, I am talking to you out there. Tell us your story.
Yes, it's so uplifting. We do want to hear about it, that message of you don't have to survive, you can thrive, and what are the steps you're going to take? What's your story? What are the ways that you're going to make that happen? We want to hear from you. In the past few weeks, we have asked some of the Legion to share what they would like to change about their organization. And we're going to check in now with Lauren. She's a teacher in the Northwest to hear her take on that very question.
This last year taught us more than we could have ever imagined. But for me personally, the most important lesson I gained in my career was the confidence in knowing and feeling that it's okay to be selfish and believe that work does not come before anything else in my life. I come from a family of educators, and I know this to be true from both of my parents. Boundaries are key to being great, to being successful. As an educator, teacher identity is critical, and you quickly learn the mantra that teaching comes before everything, probably because it's the career that impacts individuals in all aspects of our life at all times of the day. So much of our time is given up to the job, and this used to be me. I used to strive for working overtime and being selfless in my career, but this needs to change in every workplace. We do not simply exist and do not excel in our careers just because we give ourselves up, or who we are, our passions and dreams. We are not trained to believe this is how we exist. Just because we spend our entire lives working does not mean we spend all our time being selfless in our careers. We are more than our careers. We are more than our careers defining us and as our identity. It's far overdue for us to be more selfish with work.
And thanks to Lauren and all the other Legion members for submitting their content like her. If you don't want to be on camera, you can just record your audio, or you can share your typed words in a comment. Just go to willingtowin.org. It's willing spelled out, the number 2 win.org. That's our website. That's where we're hanging out with all of our podcast, TV, and radio show recordings. And don't miss all the extra, the bonus content where we show our interviews extended, so you can delve more into the minds of all these creative people that are joining the conversation, Willing to Win. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Willing to Win is produced by Lift Productions. Guests on the program are not compensated, nor is their appearance representative of the Willing to Win views. Willing to Win does not necessarily endorse any people, products, or services.
If you ever wanted to be your own boss and call your own shots, welcome to the world of franchise ownership. The adventure awaits. Meet your guides on the journey, Jerry Akers and Dr. Jeff Kaplan. Jerry is one of the most successful franchise operators in the U.S., and Jeff is a global business consultant and author. They've lived it, and now they've teamed up to help you own it. Introducing Live It to Own It, your guide to selecting, developing, operating, and expanding the business of your dreams. In these pages, your franchise journey awaits. A journey that is as much about what's in your heart as it is about what's in your head. Your future awaits. If you have the passion, the drive, and the guts to put yourself on the line, it's time you live it to own it.